All right, so welcome to session 2 or passage 2 for Tutoring on Demand here at NAMS. The passage we're looking at today from Reading Detective is From Superman to X-Men. So you can infer a little bit from that title. All right, so what are we doing during this video? Since you participated in the last one, you should have a pretty good idea, but just to review, we will preview the passage. We're going to read the passage. Then you're going to answer some questions about the passage, practice going back to the text, and find and prove your answers. All right, so this is important that you do this correctly. Now, what are some ground rules? You're going to follow along with the video the whole time, pause when you need to read or answer questions. You may rewind to hear something again, but you may not fast forward or skip things. You need to go through this as if you are following along with the teacher. You're not going to be able to fast forward the teacher, but you can rewind us. Remember that the goal is to learn, not just to get the right answers. This doesn't do you a lot of good if you're just looking to turn in a piece of paper and get it done real quick. And if you're not doing the annotations and going back into the text, you're not going to get credit. All right, so in case some of you may or may not know who I am Mr. Gibbs. I'm 7th grade ELA and social studies. It's possible that I taught you in 6th grade ELA or social studies. It is possible that I taught one of your siblings in 8th grade ELA or social studies. So I have taught it all when it comes to grade levels. And I feel like I found my home here in 7th for now. And so that's just introduction to me. Most of you know who I am. If you don't, this is me. So let's go ahead and jump right into the passage. We're going to preview this text. And when we talk about this text, obviously from Superman to the X-Men, if you have a little bit of background knowledge, you may know who these people are from Hollywood, but they're actually comic book characters. They came from comic books that you read. So as we preview the text here, you should be thinking about maybe some knowledge that you already know about these characters, not necessarily that it's going to give you all the right answers, but you have an idea of where this passage is coming from. All right, so we also have to think about some of the other things and some of the history of comics and what it's been through over the years, because that's really what this is about. So this is what you should have in front of you. Okay, it should be on 2 separate sheets of paper. It says From Superman to X-Men by Carrie Beckwith. And then on the other piece of paper, you should have 8 questions. Now, at the bottom of the first page, when you finish reading, I want you to give me a summary. Comic books. I started out for you. I don't want you to start out with I think or after reading this, I think. Start out with the word comic books and give me a summary, just a quick summary. Summary is usually a sentence on what is this text about. So I expect you to put that at the bottom in the same place you see, except you should have more room. Just one sentence. Okay? So the first thing I want you to do is to go ahead and read the text. Read the text straight through. Okay? Now, me as the teacher, I'm just going to sit back and let you do that. So go ahead and pause the video right here, and this is where you read. All right, so if you're hearing my voice, that means you have read through the text. And for some reason, if you have not, please, again, pause the video and finish reading the text in front of you from Superman to X-Men. So let's just jump right into it. Let's look at number 1. How is this story organized? You have A, in order of importance, B, in time order, C, by the type of comic book, or D, by the type of superhero. All right, so this is your question number 1. And we are going to go back into the text and justify this. Let's look at it. Okay, well, what kind of text is this? Once you read through it, something that I started seeing is dates. What does dates tend to give away? Well, think about that for a second. You should have some prior knowledge when you start seeing dates, what it possibly could give away. All right, so we have an 1897, first successful comic book ever was published. Okay, the next big boost from comics came in the invention of the first comic book superhero, Superman. All right, so, seems to be going in some sort of order. And then we get down into paragraph C. We've got another date, 1941, went to war, and so did comics. We see World War II there. Then we see, in D, after World War II. Then we go down to E. We see things like the early 1950s, then by the mid-50s. Look at F. We go into the 60s, how something saved the day. And then within the last 3 decades of the 20th century, okay, going all the way into movies that spun off from it in the 1980s, all the way to we ask what's in the future of comic books. So think about these answers. How is this story organized? In order of importance? Does that seem like it's in order of importance, or the type of comic book, or the type of superhero? I think it was in the time order, or what do we call that? Chronological. Chrono meaning time, so chronological. Isn't that? Look around, look again. 1897, talk about the next big boost was the first comic superhero. In 41, when America went to war, so did comics. Talk about when World War II ended, the popularity ended. After World War II, they were revived from true crime and horror books. Then in the 50s, then in the mid-50s, then into the 60s. Then it says the last 3 decades of the 20th century. So that's 70s, 80s, and 90s. And again, you see 80s just in case, and then saying what's next. So that is chronological order, or order of time. That is chronological order, or order of time. So from our evidence, the text structure, how it's organized, would be B, in order of time, okay? In order of time. So make sure you go back into it and justify the same way I did. I'm walking you through this. This is to help you. It is a tutoring session. It's not just you choose answers and then go back and check and see if they're right. Okay, we're doing this together. The only thing we didn't do together was read the actual passage. All right? So B should be your answer, and you justified it on why you had the answer. Now, you can do different colors, as I do on here, or you can just underline or highlight. Okay? Again, B. So let's look at number 2. Based on the article, you can conclude that the business of publishing comic books has been A, a great success, B, inconsistent, C, a great failure, or D, steady. Okay? So, we break down the question, you can conclude what is your conclusion, right? That has always been a success, inconsistent, a great failure, or steady means it never changed. Well, let's look at our text. All right. If you look here, you'll see that, yes, we have the starting, but how did it change after the Yellow Kid and Mutt and Jeff and Buster Brown? Well, the next big boost, if someone's lifting up, so that's a positive thing for comic books, was the superhero, and they became very popular. You can see where I highlighted boost and very popular. Okay, then you go down to C and you see when the war ended, so did the popularity of the war hero. So you have something being very popular and then going down in popularity, right? So up and now down. And then look, it's back up again, right? After World War II, with the true crime and horror comics, it was revived. Suddenly comic book buyers couldn't get enough of them. So you had an up, a down, and a back up. Then if you look in E, it's going back down again. Why? Because the government got involved. And A subcommittee organized to revive it, and they came up with this thing called the Comic Code Authority, which regulated stories that were in comic books. So you see, by the mid 1950s, many comic book publishers were once again going out of business. So it's gone down again. And then in the 1960s, a new science fiction superhero saved the day. And it says his name was Flash. So you're going in the 1960s, it's gone back up again after many going out of business in the 1950s. Okay? And then this talks about the next 3 decades, 20th century, many successful comic book superheroes. Right? So you've had success here. And in the very end, if the future of comic books is anything like its past, it will be full of twists and turns. So, what do you think this sounds like? If we're looking back at our questions, okay? Was it always a great success? Okay? Was it always a great failure? Did things never change? Okay? You know, in the EOG terms, we sometimes say slash the trash, stuff that's that's not right. Well, I think that you can pretty much get rid of all of these except for B, even if you don't know what inconsistent means, right? In means not. You should know that much. And then if I say consistent, right? Consistent, which means that it's steady or not steady or not the same. All right. So again, B is going to be the right answer because we can get rid of A because was it always a great success? Looking through here, was it always a great success? No. It talks about failure, it talks about things going out of business, but then it also talks about it being very popular. So it wasn't just a great failure like C says, because there were many times where, again, it says very popular. Okay, comic book buyers couldn't get enough of it. That doesn't sound like something that would be unpopular to me. And then steady means it never changed. Well, obviously we can see through here there's been ups and downs, ups and downs. So our answer is B, inconsistent. Means it is not steady. It does change. It's gone up and it's gone down. It's inconsistent. Okay? All right. Let's move on to number 3. The sequence the following events in order of which they occurred. All right, so if you have a sequence of events, how would it happen within your structure? All right, so you're looking here of the text structure. You see superhero comics became a big hit. Keyword there, what? Superhero comics. Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles are the big rage, or they're just like awesome. Everybody loved it at one time. Yellow Kid makes its first appearance. World War II ignites the popularity of soldier and spy heroes. Science fiction superheroes revive the comic book industry, and crime and horror gain popularity. All right, so really what you got to do is you got to go in and find the key words in which they occur in this, which we've already said is an order of time or chronological order, right? So you should be able to go back into this text and find it fairly quickly because you knew this happened in the order of time. Okay, so let's look. All right, well, number 1, there's Yellow Kid, right? Where we were looking for that one. So do you see Yellow Kid here? Yes, it's the 3rd one right here. All right. Then we have the boost in comic books was the invention of the first comic superhero. See? So where's something about superhero comics? All right. Look at the very first one there, right? The very first one. So that would probably be our number 2. Number 3, again, justified in the text. New heroes were American soldiers and spies. Where did we see that? Soldiers and spies. Right here. So there's your number 3. Number 4, horror books, crime books. Where did we see that in our question? Right there. So what number is that? Crime and horror books gain popularity. That was number 4. Then 5, a new science fiction superhero saved the day. Science fiction. Boom. Look at that. Number 5, science fiction superheroes revive the comic book industry. In other words, it saved the day, to revive, to bring back to life, right? So that would be your number 5. So then our number 6 talks about the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. All right. So you should be able to have gone through and justified this in your text without any major problems. And when you look at it on your answer sheet, it should look something like this. Okay. Make sure you've checked your answers, and also make sure that you're justifying these answers within the text. So 2, 6, 1, 3, 5, 4. All right. And again, you should have justified this in the text. If you want to use different colors like I do, that's great. If you want to just use pencil or a highlighter, that is also okay, but make sure you're telling me what number question you are answering. It's like, okay. Let's go on to number 4. What does the word spun off mean as used in sentence 26? So what do the words spun off as used in sentence 26 most likely mean? Resulted, halted, picked out, or combined? Resulted, halted, picked out, or combined? Well, all we got to do is, this is using context clues, so we're going to look for sentence 26, and you'll see numbers after so many of the sentences. So this is how you pick it out, because the paragraphs are numbered instead of numbered. They're A, B, C, D. So our sentences are what are using the numbers. All right, so if you look there in the text for number 25 sentence, so this one would be 26. It says, in fact, the comic book was so popular, a television miniseries and a movie spun off from it in the late 80s. Okay, so what spun off? Well, remember, with context clues, sometimes you need to look at the sentence before and after. And in this case, it would be the sentence before. So, what are we talking about? We're talking about Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, right? This is something that is still making movies today. And this was doing it back in the 80s when I was a kid. So the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles started as a comic book. So you can see this is what it started as, but then it became a popular television miniseries and movie or movies in the late 80s. So it started off as a comic book, but then spun off into television and movies. So what do we think that means? Well, if we look at our answers, it is resulted in, because it wouldn't halt. Halt means to stop. Okay? Picked out. I mean, it means what it says, picked out. Or combined. The comic book didn't combine into something else. It was, because of the comic book being popular, it resulted in. It's like a cause and effect, right? It's the effect. Because of them being a popular comic book, its result was it also became television and movies. So for number 4, your answer is A, okay? Because again, when you put B, C, and D in there, they don't make sense in the context of the sentence. So if you were to substitute, would it sound better? And the movie resulted, it became a movie, resulted from it in the late 1980s. Do you see how you can replace the word sometimes with the phrase or the words? So spun off is resulted. So the answer, A. All right, let's go on to number 5. What caused people in the early 1950s to take a closer look at comic books? All right, this is one you have to write, but this is one of those things where there's explicit answer right there in the text, okay? These are your explicit answers, ones that you can see right in the text. So let's look at number 5. All right, well, let's find something for the 1950s. As soon as you see the 1950s, boom, you know you're there, because that's what it was talking about, right? Refer back to it. early 1950s, what caused them to take a closer look at comic books? Well, as you can see here, parents and lawmakers started questioning how these horror and crime comics were affecting people, especially children. So this was the cause, right? In other words, why were people taking a closer look at the comics? Because they were worried about the children. The children! Oh, for God's sakes, the children. Think of the children. So lawmakers, and these are people that in the government, and parents started looking at them to see what was going on. What was it going to do to the brains of the children? Right? So we've got that text evidence. So what would be our answer then? Lawmakers and parents question the effect of crime and horror stories on children. Okay, so you're citing evidence for question 5 there. This is an explicit in the text answer. All right, so you were able to go right to it. Now, make sure you get this answer. Pause here if you need to, and we'll move on to number 6. Ready? All right, let's look at number 6. What is the major change from the superhero of the past to the superhero of today? So what's that major change? Okay. Well, here you've got to kind of compare and contrast. You've got to look at a couple different things and see how they were to what they've become. Okay, so that means you're going to have to be looking for details or evidence in different parts of the text. So let's look at the text together. Well, if you look at F, paragraph F, you can see in the context of where it's at. If you're looking at it, there's that picture of the superhero, so the paragraph underneath that. It says, unlike some of the original superheroes, these new superheroes had human problems and didn't always enjoy their superhero abilities. So this is changes from the superhero, right? This is a contrast. So looking at paragraph F, this will help you answer question 6. All right? So what would be our final answer here? Today's superheroes have human problems and don't always like their powers. So that is the major change from superheroes of the past to superheroes of today. And it cites it right there in the text, unlike some of the original superheroes, right? So you can already see when you say unlike some of the original superheroes that these superheroes are going to be different, okay? So, number 6, there is your answer. Take a moment, pause if you need to, and we'll move on to question 7 in a moment. Ready? All right, so now let's look at question 7. In general, you could say that the image of superheroes is A, unpopular, B, realistic, C, unchanging, or D, changing. Now, question 2 has 2 parts. It also says list the number of the 3 sentences that best support your answer. So in 7, you first got to figure out if it's A, B, C, or D, and then you've got to support it by telling which 3 sentences best support it, okay? So let's go into the text number 7. Well, when you look here, I have made it fairly easy. Looking at the text, you conclude that the image of superheroes did indeed change over time. Okay, you had the first comic book hero, which was like Superman. Then new heroes were American soldiers and spies. Then you had the science fiction hero who had real problems and didn't always enjoy their superhero abilities. And then we also talk about how they became they were just ordinary teenagers. Think of like Spider-Man. Spider-Man was a teenager when he got his powers. He's dealing with things that normal teenagers deal with while also having to deal with the Green Goblin and some villain. All right? So, if you're citing your text evidence that they changed over time, here is your answer, and also here is where they're at. So for part 1, what would we say? We'd say they changed, right? The answer is D. They were changing. They started out as Superman. You know, he's a grown-up Clark Kent, uh, working for the Daily Planet and just kind of being an adult, right? And he was also this alien, and it was just very matter of fact. And then over time, it changed because you had people like Bruce Banner, for example, in the Incredible Hulk, as you saw in the example, is here's a guy that doesn't even want his powers, and that he's doing everything he can to contain it. So you've seen how these heroes have changed over time. All right. So for part 1, question 7, the answer is D. They have changed over time. Now we got to cite that evidence. What are the 3 sentences that best support your answer? Well, we just looked at it in the highlighting, but let's look at it a little closer. We're going to refer back to the evidence we annotated to find which 3 sentences best supported the ideas that superheroes did indeed change over time. All right. Well, you have sentence 8. The new heroes were American soldiers and spies. Sentence 21, these new superheroes had human problems and didn't always enjoy their superhero abilities. And then sentence 23, it talked about how some of them, like Spider-Man, were just an ordinary teenager. All right. So if you look, and what you annotated there for your answers gives you part 2, sentence 8, sentence 21, and sentence 23. So these 3 sentences best support the answer to number 7. So you have 8, 21, and 23. And this is the second part of number 7. All right, we're almost there, guys. We're almost there. All right, you've done a good job sticking with me so far. I'm sure you're annotating properly and going along with me and making sure everything is correct. Okay, so let's do number 8. Okay, you can infer that comic books are A, usually about war and crime, B, very short stories, C, influenced by politics, or D, read and enjoyed by everyone. Now, if you're looking at stuff just for slash the trash here, and we're talking about inferring, it doesn't say it explicitly, right? It doesn't just come out and say something when you're inferring. You have to take information and then come up with your own answer, right? That was what it means to infer. You have to take all the information you have and then just support that answer with something that you don't already know. And as you can see, you're going to have to tell me which is the letter of the 2 paragraphs that best supports your answer. So again, you're inferring something based on one of these, and then it's also going to have to tell me where. So question 8 has 2 parts. Now, looking at A, B, C, or D, do you think there's anything you can get rid of? I bet you there is. Look at it for a second. Which ones can you get rid of? Out of all the things it told you, A, B, C, and D. Well, I bet you've already got a good answer, but let's look back in the text to be sure, okay? This is one thing that we always need to do is make sure that we're referring back to the text. All right, well, text evidence in question 8. Here we are, okay? Talks about America going to war. It talks about lawmakers, right? Lawmakers. It says Senate subcommittee. So what do you think that's about? Okay, this is the only kind of consistent thing I see based on these answers. Okay, well, it's politics. Okay, the answer is politics, because when you see the word politics, think of government. And if you go back into here, governments start wars, right? We were in World War II. And that, that has to be an act of Congress there, or, the president can declare war and then Congress has to kind of stamp it over time if it's an actual war, right? And then we see in E, lawmakers, Senate subcommittee, committee issued a comic authority which placed regulations. When you think of government, a lot of times you're going to think of things that regulate or that they try to control. Seems to be one of the great jobs of government. Now, so again, we came up with the answer C. How do we even know to get that answer C when we're inferring? Well, let's look at some of the other ones we had, right? Because we said it's C, politics. We think of politics, we think of government. And then that made me automatically think, okay, when were they talking about the government or, political things, right? And that's how we came up with our answer. But let's look on why we didn't choose A, B, or D. Sometimes that's just as important to understand why we didn't choose it. All right, well, it's usually about war and crime. Well, we had a paragraph, okay, that could get confusing for some people, but we had a paragraph that talked about crime stories, okay, and it talked about them in World War II, but they weren't all. Remember, we start talking about the first one being superheroes, then them fighting in wars, in war and crime. Then we had the more science fiction superhero that was much more in depth as far as the character themselves. So we know that they're not usually about war and crime. They were sometimes, but not usually. So you can get rid of A. They were very short stories. Well, we already know that these stories can carry on from issue to issue. It's not like a new story every single time you read a comic book. That's just something you have to infer. But they're obviously not short stories. Okay, so to me, B could be easily eliminated. And then D says read, read, and enjoyed by everyone. There's that word, everyone. But look, if parents and lawmakers were against it, then not everyone enjoyed them. So by getting rid of that, this is how we've gotten to C, influenced by politics. Politics, think government. Okay, and when we think of governments, again, that's going back to here. When the United States was at war, it used comics to promote patriotism. Later in the 1950s, the government regulated comics and made them use the Comic Code Authority. That's how we came up with C. Okay, and then if we look for where we found that evidence, it's in, for part 2 of the question, it's in C and E. Okay, so let's go back a couple just to see. All right, so again, here's C. This is where we're justifying it with part of number 8 here, because when World War II, you had American soldiers and spies. They fought Nazis, piloted warplanes, and investigated underground resistance movements. Okay, so it was being promoted as propaganda for the war effort during World War II, right? You're to be a patriot. Captain America was a patriot. He fought in World War II to help destroy the Nazis. If you think back to the preview of the text I showed you, there's actually a cover there of Captain America punching Adolf Hitler, the leader of Germany, okay? The dictator of Germany. And then again, we can cite this evidence by looking at letter E paragraph, okay? Lawmakers were involved. Senate subcommittee, this is one of our part of the 3 branches of government. This is our legislative branch, okay? And then that committee decided on a regulation called the Comic Code Authority, which was a stamp that had to be placed on the comics so they would be wholesome and good for the kids. So again, what that does is that tells us that politics was the answer because we think of government, okay? During the war, it used it to promote patriotism. In the 1950s, the government regulated comics and made them use the Comic Code Authority, right? So they had put regulations on comic books. All right. So we have gone through all of this together. All right. And if you've done this correctly, yours should look very similar to mine. It should be marked up telling me where you found answers where. Again, you can use different colors if you'd like. It makes it easier for me. But if you just want to use your pencil or your highlighter of one color, that is fine. Just make sure you annotate on there. This one was for question number 4. This one was for question number 8. You can put a little number 8 beside it, number 4 beside it, okay? So you have finished another great video here at NAMS with our tutoring on demand. Now, one thing, first of all, thank you. Thank you for watching this, parents. Thank you for getting your kids to do this extra little bit of work at home. It's important, and I think you'll understand why at the end of the year. We are so grateful for this. But be sure that you put your name on your work, get your parent's signature, and turn your passage into your ELA teacher. 6th, 7th, or 8th grade, whether you have Miss Conville, Miss Allred, Miss Smith, Mr. Gibbs, Miss Abercrombie, Miss Holland, whoever your ELA teacher is, make sure you turn it into them, okay? And again, this is what's going to help you. I promise you this will help get you to where you need to be when you're practicing these skills. And of course, any good person cites their work. Where did I get my pictures from? Well, there you go.